had a lot of stuff I just threw out immediately, and after all those 10 or 11 years, I could figure out a recipe pretty well and figure out any mistakes I'm going to make and then pass it all on to you so you can hopefully avoid the many mistakes I made along the way. So this class is all going to be all about pickling, which in the very niche fermentation world I'm in, pickling is like a very vague, confusing term. It's going to mean a few different things. So I'll talk about that a little. But this is a great season for pickling right now. Gardens are really like in full production mode. Cucumbers growing like crazy. Zucchinis, onions are starting to come out of the ground. Tomatoes, and I have some canned tomatoes at home, but yeah, so you can pickle almost anything, and pickling is really just the act of preserving stuff in some sort of acidic, usually a little bit salty liquid. The salt's not necessary, but it does help a lot with preservation. So there are two main kinds of pickling. I'm going to do both today. The one I think people are most familiar with is just using vinegar to pickle. Just some apple cider vinegar. Let's see, so say its acidity on it, and so it's 5% acid, this jar. So that's pretty acidic. If you ever try to drink straight apple cider vinegar, it's not the most pleasant thing. I have most people that do it just take shots of it usually if they're really into it, because there's some like supposed health benefits. So that's the most common kind of pickling, is just vegetables, vinegar usually diluted with water and a little bit of salt. You can it, like go through the whole process of like boiling the jar and really making sure it's totally safe and going to last forever, but I don't tend to get into that. It takes a lot more equipment, and I really like to just like as little equipment as possible because I have a small kitchen. I already have way too many other kitchen gadgets, so I don't want to buy more kitchen gadgets just for canning stuff, when just a simple high enough, if it's acidic enough, it's going to last a pretty long time, usually longer than it takes me to eat. But if at any point you have any questions during all this, just feel free to interrupt me or raise your hand and ask, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. So yeah, so vinegar pickling is one of the kinds of pickling. The other kind is pickling through lactofermentation. So if you went to my sauerkraut workshop, very similar process to that. So instead of adding vinegar, we're harnessing the wild bacteria that's just everywhere on our skin, in the air, on the vegetables. Harnessing that so it ferments the sugars in the vegetables into acids, which are going to preserve the vegetables also. The big difference between these two techniques is there's a little different kinds of acids that are going to be present, which are a little bit different flavors. So vinegar is acetic acids. That's going to have a very distinct vinegar flavor, whereas lactofermentation, if you've had sauerkraut, it has that distinct, almost funky flavor aroma to it. So that's one of the major differences. The other is with pickling with vinegar, there's really no fermentation going on. So you can end with a sweeter product if you want. So bread and butter pickles have some sugar in them, and they're a bit more, they're less acidic tasting because the sugar helps balance it out. Also, you can pickle fruit this way to do more green peaches that are still hard. You can pickle those in the pickling process. They'll soften up over time, get salty, a little bit more acidic, and they're really pleasant to eat. But if you did a lactofermentation with that, so using bacteria to ferment it, it would ferment out all the sugars and be somewhat less pleasant to eat. But it's still not pleasant, but different to eat. So vinegar pickling is just going to be more consistent. Can be more lingering sweetness to it. Lactofermentation, using that technique to pickling, it's going to have a more wild, unique flavor, but and there's can be a few more problems with it, but I'll go over all that. So first off, I'm just going to start cutting up some cucumbers. I usually use these jars when I'm pickling cucumbers because I find it's a good amount for me. I don't eat them too quickly, and the longer they sit, they do start to soften up a little, get a little bit more, if they sit for weeks or months, probably months, they start to get mushier and have that less classic crisp pickle flavor or texture to them. So washed all these beforehand. They're off my garden. This is a technique I figured out myself randomly during a pickling workshop I was doing is, well, first I cut off the tips of the cucumbers. The tips of the cucumbers, the little nubbins on both sides, they help the cucumber decompose in nature. They release an enzyme that breaks down the cucumber, making it mushier. So if you cut those off, you're less likely to have a mushy pickle. So I cut off both ends. Then I want the cucumbers to go up to about here. So I just kind of use this as a ruler. Put it up to that line there. Sometimes I have more trouble than other times. Cut. And then for these, I'm just gonna quarter them. If I had a larger jar or I had smaller cucumbers, I would leave them whole. But I tend to just quarter these ones. They fit pretty well. I usually fill it on its side just so I can get them more like straight and fit more in there. Just do that again. Cut off one side, then I just cut off the other, and I'll usually snack on all these bits over here, use them for like a fresh salad. Quarter this again. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna do a vinegar pickle. It's actually when I used to never pickle with vinegar. I was like very much like a fermentation purist. I had to ferment everything. I couldn't use any vinegar ever. But now it's actually the kind of pickle that I eat the most often, or make the most often. Specifically, I use red onions. It's a very good condiment on sandwiches. We use a very similar technique. The only difference is you just slice it more thinly. I can show that also. And actually, I realized I'm going to do a vinegar pickle second because the way I'm cutting them is actually better for a lactofermentation pickle. On my drive over, I planned out I'm going to cut it one way to do it for this kind of fermentation, then cut the other way for vinegar pickling. Then I just completely forgot that until just now. So for that, I have not made anything that I've not done anything that can't be reversed yet. I'm just going to cut this down a little. So I'm doing right as I'm trying to just jam as many in there as possible. The reason for that, so a lot of times with fermentation, you can buy all these fancy gadgets. One is like these glass weights that fit inside the mason jar top and keep everything weighted down or submerged. What I do is I just pack it in really tightly. Then by the time it's done fermenting, once it's done fermenting and they start to like maybe get dislodged and float up, at that point I just stick them in the fridge and they are good to go. So just fill this up with water. So my scale broke like 2 or 3 months ago, and instead of getting a new one, I just figured out how to do all my fermentation without a scale. But I'm still going to give you all the measurements. So with this kind of lactofermentation I switched to we're starting with now, you want between 2 and 5% salt of weight. So I did all the math at some point, like did the weight of water, the weight of cucumbers, cabbage, all that stuff, and it's usually all about pretty similar. So I normally use this size jar, 32 ounces, 16 ounces. So 1 tablespoon of salt is almost perfect for this. That comes out to about 3.5 to 4% salt. So for one of these, so I've just filled it with water. Water very close to the brim. I'm going to put in about half a tablespoon. I also ran out of my bulk kosher salt, so I'm using like fancy sea salt right now. Any salt works. Iodized salt works. Just makes it a little cloudy. Himalayan pink salt works. There's just more minerals in that, so you'll see some more sediment on the bottom. Sea salt works. It's all basically the same, just different salts have some different minerals and minerals in it, which I've never done it side by side, but theoretically can affect the flavor. So the salt's in there. A lot of people will like boil the water with the salt beforehand to really get it dissolved, but if it just sits out, that salt is gonna dissolve in that water. I would need a lot of, an obscene amount of salt for it to not dissolve in the water. So just in a day, if not less, all the salt, you can see some on the bottom, you can come and look at this later, all of that is going to dissolve and start to saturate all the cucumbers. So yeah, that's it. It's making your own fermented pickles is that easy. After a week, the top should have ballooned up a little, because so lactofermentation, it's converting the sugars in the cucumbers into lactic acid and CO2. So that really helps preserve it in two ways. That all the acid stops really anything else from growing there. No bad mold is going to grow in there once it drops below 3.5 pH, which happens really quick. Water's at 7 pH, around 7 pH, and the fermentation just quickly drops it. So that helps preserve it, and the CO2 that's getting produced in there will also help preserve it. Most bad things need some oxygen to grow. So when the CO2 is just completely filled up this thing and ballooning up here, then it is just totally safe. And with pickles, I like to just do a week fermenting. It's like a little bit of acidity. With sauerkraut, I tend to let that go like a few weeks to a month or longer. It's there's less water in it. It stays crunchier and like that. I find like if I'm eating a whole pickle, I'm never eating like that much sauerkraut in one sitting. So the less acidity is better because it's just more pleasant to eat. Yeah.
Now, is that a week in the refrigerator or a week in the shelf?
Great question. Week on the shelf, just like in a cabinet somewhere out of direct sunlight on the counter. I usually do it on the countertop actually. Yeah, a week on the countertop, then I move it to the fridge right after that. Yeah. So yeah, that is good there.
Do you mark date on it?
I almost never do. I just try to remember. I do on occasion when I take a picture with my phone, because that saves all the data, has its timestamp, but yeah, common practice, if I was doing this in a commercial occasion, I would 100% date it, but yeah, I get very lazy about it. I try to do as little work as possible when I'm fermenting, so I do not date it.
How long will it last in the fridge?
Almost indefinitely.
Is this the fermented one versus the other one?
Yeah, actually both have like a very similar end product. If it's acidic enough that it's going to not go bad really.
But it'll have a different crispiness versus
Yes.
the soft pickle.
Exactly, yeah. So at some point it just becomes like an unpleasant texture. At that point, what I do is, I just with sauerkraut mostly, is I'll dehydrate it and like just put it in a food processor or spice grinder, and it turns into like a really nice like salty, acidic, like umami kind of powder that I just put on like popcorn, pizza, eggs, yeah. But yeah, after some point, I just try to eat them quick enough. That's my goal. I try to race the very slow decomposition process, which I can usually win. Alright, and so that was lactofermentation. I sadly did not bring any samples of that today, but I did bring two just vinegar pickles. So before we actually make a vinegar pickle, I'll have some samples for all of you to try. So this, I just took some red onions and chopped them up just like into big loops. You can chop them up more. I just aesthetically wanted like the full rings. So the recipe I used for this was actually used homemade vinegar. I had a beer that had gone flat, so I just turned that into vinegar. Making your own vinegar is a super easy process. And it's really fun. I've been doing it all summer with like the berries growing in my yard. But so take any alcohol that's under 8%.
Under how much?
8% alcohol.
8%.
So you can dilute it with water if you want. Then you just put it in a jar and then mix it with 20% raw apple cider vinegar. You can use Bragg. Like Hannaford has their own raw apple cider vinegar brand. So 20% by volume raw vinegar. And that will just, over 3 or 4 weeks, that's going to ferment it into vinegar. You'll see like that classic mother vinegar form along the top. And yeah, after 3 or 4 weeks, you have delicious vinegar. So I just took, it was like a stout or something that had gone totally flat. So I'm like, I don't want to drink this. I'm just going to make a really awesome vinegar out of it. So you can make just any alcohol. You can even you can take just vodka, dilute it with, let's say carrot juice down to 8% alcohol. I should be able to do that math in my head, but it's pretty easy to calculate. Just 40% divided by 5 gets you down to 8. So 5 parts carrot juice, 1 part vodka, then you add the apple cider vinegar, and now you have carrot vinegar. You can do that with really anything. Celery juice, trying to think of some other weird things you would never find at a grocery store. Yeah, it's just any juice, really anything. You could just dilute the vodka with water and have a very sterile white vinegar, just distilled white vinegar
You can do
flavor.
pears for pear vinegar and whatever,
Oh, yeah.
salads with strawberry vinegar.
Definitely, yeah. So tons of fun stuff you can do. It's really easy. I would do a workshop on it, but it's literally just mixing 2 things together and waiting for 3 weeks. It's not the most exciting thing. This is similar, but at least I'm cutting stuff up. So yeah, that's why I decided that. I did equal parts vinegar, water, and sugar. The onion out. Equal parts vinegar, onion, sugar, and then about a tablespoon or 2 of salt. I may have done 3. I think I was going overzealous. I think some black peppercorns, some garlic cloves, and some red pepper flakes. So guys, give a slight bite. I'll chop this up now. Some cups over here, and spoons if you want. So yeah, come up and grab a sample if you'd like.
So you got garlic in that?
Yeah. So with this one, I did this one a little bit differently than the one I'll be showing you today, just because I'm not in my home kitchen right now. But so yeah, just boil vinegar, water, and sugar together until it's all combined. And then while still hot, I poured it into jars. You do not have to. You can let it cool down completely. I'm just doing it while it's hot. While it's hot makes it just a little bit safer. But here, the acidity in this is so high that it really doesn't matter that much. Doing hot versus cold, vinegar, will also break down the vegetable a little bit more. You can see the color difference between these two. This is a nice brown. This is a deep purple liquid. Just because the heat helped. Actually, time would have done it too. I think these are a week old, but the purple from those red onions really just seep down and make a beautiful liquid. If I use a clear vinegar, you'd really see a deep purple vinegar at the end. It's great. You can toss the liquid when you're done, but you can use it in salad dressings after to get a really nice red onion flavored salad dressing.
Can you reuse it?
Be good on a hamburger.
Yeah, that's my plan for tonight. You can reuse it at least once or twice. The only thing that's going to happen is you're going to lose liquid every time, so it's going to be just less and less, and some of the flavors will carry over. So you could do there's a lot of traditional cultures where it's just you always have a pot of soup going, and you just keep adding more and more stuff to it. Then you take some out, add more stuff. It just keeps breaking down. So you could do something like that with vinegar. Also with your pickling solution, you just have to top it off on occasion. All right.
What flavors did you guys taste in the onions? Just wondering. I'm not an onion person. just onion. But did you taste? Could you taste garlic or any of the other?
Yeah,
Yeah,
garlic, yeah.
Yeah, red. Yeah.
I'll be reading this for a while.
Yeah. Probably should have given a warning about that. The cucumber, actually, I have not tried this yet. It's still fresh. What I actually did, it's called a hot fill method. So I just put the liquid in while still boiling hot, then put the lid on tight and flipped it over, and it creates a pretty decent seal. I just experimenting around with that sometimes. Actually, I'm gonna try one of this real quick before I give that to you all. Still crispy.
You can use the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can use this.
Sounds good. But this, you can definitely taste those flavors a lot more. As you're probably aware, cucumbers are much less overpowering flavor than red onion.
You got garlic in this too?
Yep, so I've used the same pickling solution. I like way overestimated how much I would need, and then I thought like, oh, I have like 30 cucumbers at all times, so I'm just going to chop some up and make a jar of cucumbers.
Thank you. Do you have sugar in that one?
Yeah, so it's equal parts vinegar, sugar, and water. So this would be more like akin to like a bread and butter pickle, that little bit of sugar in it. You can, the sugar,
Hold it. Equal parts, you take a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of water, a teaspoon of vinegar.
like you said, well, my whole batch is a cup of vinegar, a cup of water, a cup of sugar.
Okay.
Then
So
about,
it is-
It's a lot of sugar.
yeah.
That's why I made the regular ones without the sugar.
Yes, red onions I like, 'cause it like really brings together those flavors a lot better, because it's just a small condiment. With cucumbers, it can be a bit overpowering.
Can you reduce the ratio of the sugar
Yeah.
without reducing?
Oh, yes, yes, the sugar is not necessary for preservation, it's just more for like taste preference. I was just I watched some YouTube chef's video, and then just he blindly inspired me to follow his recipe without even thinking about it.
Oh.
That you can do no sugar at all.
Yeah, I cut my sugar in half from what they recommended. I wondered how they were going to come out. I haven't tasted one yet.
Yeah, so yeah, this is equal parts vinegar, sugar, and water, so now you know what that tastes like. You can see like that crispness is still there.
How old are these then?
I wanna say 2 or 3 weeks old. Yes. And these, so put the vinegar in, immediately stick it in the fridge. And probably wait a day or two for like the vinegar to really penetrate everything.
Usually like 4 days at least, right?
Yeah, if you use hot liquid, I would say 2 or 3 days. If you're using cold liquid, 4 days to a week for it to really like penetrate everything. But you are more than welcome to eat it earlier. It's just gonna be less vinegary tasting, the flavors have not come together as much.
Now, once you open the jar, how long can they be preserved?
If you keep it in the fridge, just give it a good shake, coats everything in acidic liquid, and it's gonna last easily months. You'll quickly see, like, in the very off chance you might see mold growing on top, and you'll see that immediately and like, oh, this has gone bad. Otherwise, it's just the texture goes down. I know when I was in college, like there were pickle jars in our fridge that had been there like probably for like a whole year, if not longer, and they were still fine. And a lot of commercial pickles, they don't use very many chemical preservation agents that I cannot pronounce. Like most don't use a lot of those, if any, and they last a very, very long time. So salt is just dissolving a bit more. Yeah, feel free to come and take a look at that if you want. Something really fun you can do with either pickling method is I do not have the patience for this or like the hand dexterity, but you could cut out shapes of like carrots or like beets to make like a little seam along the edge. Like you cut the carrots into like little leaf shapes. That might be hard, but like beets that would probably be easier. A larger jar like this would be even easier, but you can spend a lot of time like of the aesthetic of what the outside looks like. Because right now, it looks nice, just like a lot of straight up and down pillars. The occasional one where you can see the flesh, but you can really go crazy with that if you want and like do a lot of fun stuff. Like, make it more like an art project, like making a collage than you are even pickling. Alright, so on to some vinegar pickling. So this, I am going to actually use these up. And I'm just going to slice little discs so that make some pickled chips. I try to cut the same thickness every time, but I obviously do not do that well.
You use a mandolin.
I have one, but I'm always scared to use it.
Guide the gloves.
I need to get like
Nice glove.
one of those attachments for it.
The gloves are the best.
Oh, good to know. But They don't need to be uniform. When they're not uniform, what the end effect is gonna be is that the thinner ones, they are going to pickle faster and break down faster. Because they're thinner, so everything can penetrate it more quickly. And especially with this shape, like when it's here, there's like to get to the center there. That's a pretty far distance stuff has to travel, but the furthest something has to travel is the thickness of the pickle chip, so everything goes faster with these. Okay. So I'm just gonna cut up a few more of these. I'm still cutting the ends off. Like 1 1/4 cucumbers for this so far. Let's see. I never know how many cucumbers are gonna fill a jar, especially this size, but a good shake. Well, it looks like not just really, maybe 1 1/2 cucumbers at most, depending on the cucumber size. I know that varies a lot. Yeah, actually, so I could actually put some banana pepper in here if I want. Pickled banana peppers are delicious. But I'm not gonna top that. Do you have a question?
That's what I should have done with the peppers, cause I like them raw, but I gave away to all my neighbors, yeah, pickle pepper.
Yeah, I was actually gonna do some pickled red onions today, but I really didn't wanna be like up here crying in front of everybody. I'm not gonna top this off just yet. Gonna add some of my seasonings first. I think just add some ginger and garlic.
So you don't use the pickling spice that you buy in the store?
I do on occasion. More likely, I'm just opportunistically making pickled stuff, and I don't carry the pickling spice on me regularly. So like if I have all the ingredients, I'll add dill and peppercorns, and I forget what else goes in, like some nutmeg and mustard seed, but not always. I actually ran out of black pepper corn like yesterday, so I'm totally out of that right now, so I couldn't even bring that. So another tip which I consistently forget to do is something you can do is add tannins into this. Tannins they're like red wine, they make your mouth feel kind of dry, but they're another preservation agent. You can most easily find them in like bay leaves, maple leaves, grape leaves, just a lot of tea bags. I know a lot of people put tea bags like at the bottom of their pickling jar. And what those tannins do, how they help preserve is probably other ways, but they help preserve like the texture, the crispness of whatever you're making. So if you want to make cucumbers or if you want to make pickles that are gonna have like a good texture for like 6 months to a year, then you want to add some tannins to it. So like you could just like tuck a bay leaf in there, which will add some nice flavor. Also, just tuck it on the side, and that's really all you need to do. I of course consistently forget to add those, or I'm constantly running out of bay leaves. So whenever I make soup, I have like 3 bay leaves, so I run out pretty quickly. Okay. Trying to think how much water to fill this. I think it was.
It wasn't that much.
No, yeah, it was
Not much.
less than a half cup. So I'm going for equal parts water, vinegar. Not too much. Just trying to do about half maybe 3/8 of it, or 1/4 of a cup. No, that's too much even. When you're doing this small quantity, it's hard. I definitely recommend doing bigger batches. It's not the hardest process, but just doing stuff in larger batches is always more efficient. You make a huge pot of your pickling liquid, and then just pour it all in there.
Do you put salt in there now, or you can put it on top again?
I was gonna wait just in case I didn't use all the liquid. Then I've way underestimated that. So I think about double that. I'm shooting for just equal parts water and vinegar. These when I tasted that one was a bit too sweet for me. I'm gonna go in like the total opposite direction, add no sugar at all. Ah, jeez.
I think it's because they take up less space.
Yeah, I'm just gonna eyeball at this point. Yeah, so this is equal parts vinegar and water is what I shoot for, but it's okay if you're a little bit off. That it's mostly filled now. It's just they're gonna float a little. Like with these, they're really jammed in there tight, so they're not gonna float around. But these are just loose little discs. Now I'm gonna add. Very similar amount of salt that I did to that, just about a half tablespoon. That may prove to be a little bit too salty. And actually, going back on my word already, I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar also, just about a tablespoon. Maybe same amount of salt as I did sugar. Just a little bit of sweetness in there. Gotta try to stir that, but it's too full to do that. So at this point, you could be adding black peppercorns, like dill. Yeah.
Now, when you do this, can you reuse the sealing thing?
Yeah. So.
Because you're not really processing it like that.
I don't know how familiar people are with canning, but then around here, I believe that's like a wax ring. So part of the canning process is melting that ring onto the lip there to really seal it.
Okay, so when you heat it.
Yeah, so with this process, I'm pretty sure you can reuse it, but I think that seal might get damaged just in day-to-day use of getting your pickle chips out. So if you're canning, I would recommend just getting brand new ones. I don't can often, so I'm not like an expert on it in any way. But yeah, so with this, frequently I will boil the liquid and add it in hot. I think with this, especially with the thinner ones, that hot liquid is gonna break it down really quick. Like, it's gonna make it break down a lot faster. This, I have everything added. One thing, since I just put the garlic and ginger in fresh. It's gonna take more time for all those aromas to leach out. Like, I think osmosis is just for salt and water, but I'm gonna use it for aroma. It's just like, reach an equilibrium where like all the flavors of the garlic and ginger like fully get through everything and equalize everywhere. So a few days in the fridge. So yeah, these I just keep in the fridge at all times. I think they could stay on the counter. They would just get mushier faster, potentially start fermenting because you haven't boiled anything. But even if it starts fermenting, it's high enough acidity that you're safe. Just might get some funkier flavors going on there. But yeah, super easy, and this was half a cup of vinegar, maybe tablespoon of salt, tablespoon of sugar, actually half a tablespoon of salt and sugar, 1.5 cucumbers. Like, to buy this in the jar, probably like, I don't know prices these days for cucumbers, like $3 or $4 for a jar, and then you could just buy a pack of cucumbers for the same amount to make like 3 or 4 jars. So once you know how to do it, it's super easy. You can like really fun and inventive with flavors, really explore, add your own ingredients. A lot of times I do like a mix of like cucumbers, red peppers, banana peppers, red peppers, onions too. You can chop it up smaller to make like a pre-made relish almost. You can pickle almost anything. Well, you can pickle anything. It's just almost anything will be pleasant to eat afterwards. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you have any recipes that we can take with us?
I sadly do not today. My printer ran out of ink, so I I'm starting as a middle school teacher in like a week or two, so my next paycheck doesn't come till next week, so I've been trying not to buy ink, because ink is crazy expensive these days. I think it always was, but even more so now. Sadly, I do not have recipe cards.
If you wanna email anything to me, then I can
Oh yeah, I can
do
shoot.
that here.
That would be good.
Yeah, I could print it out and,
Yeah, I'll shoot. Yeah, Patty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can email you the 2 recipes I
Yeah.
got from my friend's mom that does it all, used to do it all
Yeah.
the time. Her recipe's for 24 cups of cucumbers, so you just have to half,
Yeah.
make it smaller, but you
Yeah.
can see the ratios and
Mhm.
that kind of, one's the dill one, and then the other one is the sweet turmeric pickle recipe I have.
Yeah. What's I find for deciding how much of a flavoring to add is like look at your recipe for like a dinner you're gonna make, and however much of like a spice you're gonna add to that is probably good for like a jar this big. It's a similar size. If you want like a stronger flavor, so like using some more like an intense seasoning, so like if you want the cucumber flavor to really burst, like you can add like enough like garlic for a whole dish into like a jar this big, and then you get like some really intense bursts of flavor. If you're putting this like a burger or something or a sandwich, it's gonna come through a lot more. But generally speaking, like I do half a tablespoon. That treats me well for most spices. Some spices like are a lot more pungent. Like I'm not gonna add a half tablespoon of saffron to a pint jar. That get really expensive really fast. But like peppercorns, I think some other fun ones. All like juniper berries. If you go on like any of the mountains up here, you'll find juniper berries growing at the tops of most. Those make a really nice flavor, and they're really common in German pickled food. Another really fun thing to do if you like spicy is, or sweet even, is instead of adding sugar or like just red pepper flakes, you can blend up like 1 or 2 hot peppers or an apple in with the water and vinegar, and then use that as the brining liquid, and that will just get the flavors in there really well. That's really common in Korea. So the Korean kimchi, which most people have probably heard of that. It's like we think of it as like just like Korean sauerkraut, but kimchi, that word is closer to our word for pickling. So it's like a very encompassing term. There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kinds of kimchi. So you can, and they use like a paste to ferment stuff in, so you can kind of steal some of that. So just like blend some peppers or apples or tomatoes into your liquid. I actually use tomato juice for liquid sometimes, so I get really nice like tomatoey. It makes it a lot more savory. Tomatoes are really high in MSG, which really trigger that like savory flavor in your mouth. So if you want a more savory pickle, that's a nice trick you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Korea, I went to a village and had some kimchi. I had a spoon of it and I was putting it in my mouth, and a drop of liquid fell on my tongue and my whole body went numb. Wow. Yeah, they eat significantly.
Yeah. They like it spicy, yeah.
Wow.
Also, like Szechuan peppercorns, they have like a numbing tingly flavor, which is like very similar to that spicy flavor. You can get it at like a lot of like, I think I've seen it in Hannaford even. You can find a lot of grocery stores, but that's like a fun thing to add. It just adds a little like extra fun flavor that you might not find in most pickles you find in America. Are there any other questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank
Good
you,
luck with
Sam.
your new job.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you all so much for coming.